actually has been better with Joe Flacco than it has been with Darnold. And that had their coach Adam Gase saying this yesterday.
I came here to help him develop his career, and we haven't been able to do that. Every game's so important. Keep trying to help him grow, keep trying to help him develop and see things the way that he needs to see them. And we need to do things well, around him. But at the same time, it's on me to get him to play better than what he's played. So far, I haven't done a good enough job.
All right, so taking my emotions out of the conversation, Mark, let me just come to you. I see Bart shaking his head. Mark, let me come to you. You know Darnold well, obviously. He's an SC guy. You're an SC guy. He's the Jets quarterback. You're a former Jets quarterback. Do you believe with a fresh start he can recapture the magic that at one time had teams talking about tanking for him?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is he's shown flashes. He's shown enough, in my opinion, to give him a chance somewhere else. Indy, San Francisco, somewhere that's going to develop around him, draft around him, and put him in positions to be successful. The problem is he's trying to play right now because he's so dang competitive, and he's still a little banged up from that injury a few weeks back. So, in my opinion, I thought he shouldn't have played at all the rest of the year. He should have just sat it out, went on and got to another place and hadn't put any more bad film out there. He doesn't need to. He doesn't have to prove anything else. If anything, this is only hurting his value.
It's an interesting thought. Bart, you're around that team all the time and you're shaking your head. Why?
I'm emotionally abused anyway by having to cover this team. But I tell you what, Mark is wrong. He has a lot to prove because he understands if he gets one victory, that potentially gets his option picked up because they won't be able to get Trevor Lawrence. So he has to come back and try and do whatever he can to try and get a victory. If he wins a game and Trevor Lawrence isn't an option, then Sam Darnold becomes your best option. Mark, if I take my camera right now, I can show you the Jets facility. I'm like 2 feet from it, man. I hear things rumbling. Bro, but listen. He's damaged. He's not broken.
Go ahead.
Listen, he's damaged, not broken.
But they're not picking up his option. They're not going to pay him.
Maybe. Sanchez, go. Why are they not picking up his option?
They can't pick up his option. They're going to end up paying him like $27 million in a couple years. He hasn't proven he's worth that.
But if it's no Trevor Lawrence, then they have to. What's their other option? Go out and get Jameis Winston?
No, you let him play the fourth year, Bart. You let him play the fourth year, and then you move on.
Yeah, it's not one of the other.
That's what you want to do. Or you just move on because he can't play.
I'll just let you guys do this.
Sam Darnold, I think he needs to play. I think he needs to play. I don't think he needs to sit out.
Let me try very hard to get one person talking at a time. Hold on one second. Hold on. Let me try and get, because all of you are saying interesting things and no one can understand any of them. Mark Sanchez, you're saying that you do not believe the Jets should or will pick up his option regardless of whether they get Trevor Lawrence or not.
Correct.
And why?
I just don't think he's shown that he's worth that there. I don't think it works in New York for Sam. I think it works somewhere else. And my only contention with him playing right now is if he's not healthy. Don't go out and try and prove yourself on a team and in a franchise that's going the wrong direction. They're ready to reboot. You just go somewhere else. All you need is one team to like you, and they'll build around you and help your career. They can resurrect his career.
Let me get RC into the conversation here. What have you seen, and what are your thoughts on him taking all this, the future out of it?
Listen, Mark is exactly right. You've seen flashes. Every now and then you get him rolling out of the pocket to his left, throwing back across his body and completing touchdown passes, or you get him scrambling out of the pocket and scoring in primetime football. You can see some of those things. The things that scares you is still the decision-making, the interceptions, the turnovers. Those are things we saw when he was coming out of USC. But here's what the positive has to be. First off, Adam Gase, of course you failed him. Of course you didn't do the job that you were brought there to do, other jobs you said you came over to do. But we've seen this with Ryan Tannehill. Look at somebody getting into a new facility, a new organization, a new type of team, a team that builds around you, a team that is set up to win, and then you can excel, then you can succeed. I believe that's what Sam Darnold needs to do. They not only need to let Sam Darnold go because it's best for the Jets, it's also best for his career. Let's not fight this guy. It's over in New York.
Go ahead, Bart.
So for me, if he's able to win a game, then he becomes your best option if you can't get Trevor Lawrence. Understanding that Adam Gase won't be here. he'll be able to get a new coach, maybe the enemy. They have a lot of draft capital. They have a lot of salary cap. They're going to have money when nobody else is going to have money. They can bring a Zach Ertz in here. They can go get Juju or Galladay. They can go out and build a team around him. And that's what you have to do if you can't get Trevor Lawrence. They understand that it's more about Adam Gase and his inability to be a comparable coach than it is about Sam Darnold's ability to be a very good quarterback. He may be good. He's not great. He's not elite. I think it's still in his Dak Prescott. You can win with him. And if you can't get Trevor Lawrence, who's a generational talent, he's a force multiplier, then you double down on Sam Darnold, because we know if you give him weapons, I mean, hell, before this, who was the best weapon they ever had? Mims? Herman? Like, what are we talking about? This is a guy that we can't evaluate because he has anybody.
Mark, get a quick final thought. Go ahead, Sanchez.
Yeah, I agree with all that, Bart. All I'm saying is just because he wins a game doesn't mean you go pay him $26 million in his fifth year. They can just keep him through through next year without exercising the fifth-year option and see how it goes. Leave him in like a prove-it-year kind of contract. That's fine.
Okay, we will leave it there.
Like
and
that,
I will just say this.
Pay extra money.
Perhaps appropriately, that conversation was even more disorganized than the Jets' offense has been all year long. We'll take a short break and we will...
Has ended there in Philly, but I was told that the ownership is looking at everything. They want to see improvement over the next few weeks. So that starts from GM Howie Roseman all the way down to coaches and players. So keep a close eye on Philly to see if they make any improvements.
All right, really interesting. Everyone on notice for a team that clearly had higher expectations than this. Bart, so you hear that. What are your thoughts on where you would point the blame for the Eagles?
Well, I think I would go directly to Howie Roseman because, listen, it's not his fault. I mean, you look at the two general managers in Philadelphia sports. I mean, has it been two more transactional type of guys rather than Howie Roseman and Daryl Morey? I mean, they're probably exchanging Coke bottles or something right now. When you look at it, this is a team that got old. It's not the fact that Carson Wentz can't play. It's the fact that they surrounded him with subpar talent and an aging roster. Jason Peters is going to walk into the Hall of Fame, but I don't think that he's playing at that level. He's capable of playing at that level anymore. It's okay. They have to reload and reset. We saw it happen in Seattle when Russell Wilson, after the Legion of Boom, left. They had to restructure their team. And to do that, it takes a couple of years. But when you do that and you decide to try and stay competitive during a rebuild, you have to make sure that you hit on your draft picks. And the fact that they let Justin Jefferson go to Minnesota when they had opportunity to get elite talent to maybe replace Alshon Jeffries and have a guy that can beat you down the field, they decided to go with Rieger. And those are the misses that you can't have when you're playing this high stakes of transactional football.
They also drafted a receiver a few spots ahead of DK Metcalf the year before, so there have been some misses. And Mark Sanchez, then there's the Jalen Hurts of it all. And I know that you had, pardon me, a reasonably similar experience with this when you were a starting quarterback. Tell us about that and how you think this might impact Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I think Bart remembers this too, but we did this with Brad Smith. We ran a lot of Wildcat. We had a whole package for him. We also tried to do this with Tim Tebow. And the differences there were, the guy that goes in for the quarterback, Taysom Hill going in for Drew Brees, as long as that person, isn't infringing on that starter's real estate to take that starting job, then there's no issues. We know this is a gadget thing. We work on this. We were dedicated to it. We worked on it in the offseason, ad nauseum, really. And the idea was this is going to help our offense, our rushing attack. And it did. When Tim came in, we didn't spend nearly as much time on task, and it was nobody's fault other than the coaching staff, really, because it's not Tim's fault. He's coming in doing everything he can. I'm going in doing everything I can to be the starter. And it didn't help either of us because now this other guy coming in is kind of infringing on the starter's real estate, and that's just the situation, right? It's nobody's fault. But right now they draft Jalen Hurts, and he comes in to do some of the same things that maybe Carson Wentz does. Now you're sending mixed messages, not just to Carson Wentz, who's, at this point a little fragile, and the entire team, the organization, the fan base. Nobody knows what's going on. So if you're not really practicing that, if you're not dedicated to that, and he's coming in to throw a quick out, what is that?
I completely agree.
Let's just take the gray out, Mark. Tim Tebow was coming. He believed that he could take your job. Brad Smith understood that his role was to be a part of the offense, not to be the offense. So it's the fact that when they brought in Tim Tebow, he didn't realize that he was coming in to replace Brad Smith. He thought he was coming in to replace you. So it was an uncomfortable situation because Tim saw himself as a starter when you were the starter and an unquestioned leader of the team. And Tim just messed it all up.
No, I didn't say that.
Guys,
I didn't say that.
Well, I said it because you can't.
Okay. Diana, let me come to you on that because that's not what, I don't know which of those things is going on at this point with Jalen Hurts.
Here's the thing
That's the problem.
with Carson Wentz, because of his contract, guys, they cannot give up on Carson Wentz just yet. But the problem, I think, for us as we're watching him out there, we saw 2017 Carson and we saw 2020 Carson, right? And those are drastically different. So I think Carson Wentz is just more 2018, 2019. That's the real Carson Wentz. I do think injury and some issues with the offensive line and that became problems for Carson. But I think the next big question for Philly is going to be, can somebody come in here and get Carson Wentz back to that middle area? Because that guy is a lot better than we see now. Or do they want to just completely move on, which really would not make sense because of the dead money?
I want to make sure I'm being clear, or that I'm clear on what you're saying. When you say bring someone else in, you're talking about a new coach, right? And ultimately, that's what you're saying, yes?
Yeah, I've always heard great things about Doug Peterson and his ability to connect with Carson. But the storyline I always hear coming out of Philly when you talk to people about these offensive struggles is they always go back to when Nick Foles